Hey guys, welcome back to another time-lapse video. In this one I am painting a mermaid, and I was actually kind of concerned about this video a little bit because as I mentioned in my vlog last week, I was feeling a little art blocked and I was really struggling to come up with an idea for an illustration, and yeah, I was really concerned that I wouldn't have a video up for this week, but here we are. So I saw a lot of people doing mermaids for Mermaid, and I was like, oh, I kind of want to join in on the fun. And I think it was actually a good thing for me to do because I've been focusing a lot on doing backgrounds and adding some sort of story element to my paintings, and those are generally things that are outside of my comfort zone, and in contrast, characters are something that are more in my comfort zone. So doing something with just a simple character, doing a simple thing, I felt like was a little less daunting. So it actually really helped in terms of like just getting something down on paper. But because I was just doing a single character, I still wanted to try to fill the canvas somehow. So I toyed with the idea of having fish swimming around her, but then that would have been a little bit more difficult, and I also was thinking behind that to put a freaking background. I was like, okay, wait, we're not going into this again. So then I was like, okay, well maybe I'll just make her tail like bigger and have it kind of twirling around a little bit, and then make her hair kind of whooshed out, because I kind of wanted it to look like it's going up with how her arms are going up, like as if she swung her arms up. So that's kind of what I ended up going with. And I was still trying to keep my line work still clean, and I felt like most of it came out relatively cleaner than what I usually do. There are still some parts of it that are still pretty sketchy, and I would like them to be cleaner next time. So I'm pretty happy with that. It actually turned out to make the painting process a little bit more fast, which was good because I was pretty crunched for time in terms of this painting. But then I also tried to do scales. And I tried doing scales by doing this kind of curved hatch pattern and trying to draw the scales within that. But I really wasn't liking how it was coming out because I really wanted it to warp around the tail. But I just couldn't get the right feel for it. And then I was also thinking like, well, I'm not going to scale this entire tail. I only want to do like patches of it. And I also want to do some like iridescence lighting on it. And I think it wouldn't have been done as well if I had drawn them all out and tried to paint them one by one and then try to do that. So I ended up scrapping the scales because of time and just the way they looked. Just I didn't really like it that much. So yeah, the scales got canceled. They come back though, just in a weird different form. So overall I was pretty inspired by betta fish for this mermaid, and I was generally trying to keep the look of the fins as like a betta fish. So I have like the dorsal fin, the ventral fins, and then I was going to add the thing called an anal fin, but I had decided against it because it just looked weird. So generally I just tried to keep the look of the fins kind of betta-like, and I was also looking at colors for betta fish to try to stay in that realm as well. So one thing that I usually struggle with is colors, and I was actually pretty happy with how these colors came out. At first they were pretty like all over the place, and I was kind of scared that there was too many colors, especially when I added the green to the tips of the blue hair. I just felt like it was a little too much, and at the same time I felt like it was a nice pop of color, but I felt like it was a little just too chaotic of colors going on. So later I ended up changing it, but overall, I'm really happy with how the colors came out because I just tend to struggle picking out colors, and when I paint those colors, I feel like they tend to turn out pretty muddy, or they just lack the saturation that I would like them to have, and they just generally look pretty dull. So I have been trying to make my paintings look a little bit more saturated, and especially in the shadows. I really like when I see people's art that have these really bright but dark shadows. I really wish I could accomplish that. It just looks so cool. I love how they do it. But I still really like how the colors for this one ended up turning out. So overall, the rendering process actually went pretty smoothly. Given that the lines were relatively clean, it definitely helped me out that way. It got a little tough in parts like the hands. I tend to struggle a lot with the hands, and especially in the knuckles. They kind of look a little bit mushy for a little bit, but then they definitely came together a lot better when I started adding a little bit more hard edges into some of the crevices and stuff, so I felt like that really pulled them together a little bit more. I absolutely loved painting the torso. I wish I could paint it 1,000 times over because it was so much fun having that skin tone blend into that purple and then blend that into the blue. I absolutely loved it. I had so much fun painting that, and just like the torso in general and all the muscles and stuff. So much freaking fun. I would do it again. The tail was a little bit hard to do. I always find that doing long painting strokes just doesn't work well for me, or I just haven't figured out how to make it look natural. Like, I feel like it looks well in the shorter fins, but when it comes to longer strands of like fins, it doesn't quite capture that right feeling. And I think it might also be part of the fact that some of the shadow streaks don't really have that dark streak that the other ones do. So I try combating it by putting in highlights, but I also put in the highlights because in my value check, the pink was kind of blending in too much with the blue of the tail, so I wanted it to stand out more. And I also want to try to kind of put in more pops of highlights, and I kind of wish I did more actually, like on the tail, like putting a nice like bright blue into the tail. I felt like that would have really pulled it together more. But overall, the hardest thing for me, I think, was actually the hair. And I think this kind of relates to the idea of how the fins were kind of hard for me to paint because of these long, straight, sort of straight strands of shading and just painting in general. I really just struggled with the hair. I just wasn't liking how straight down everything was. It just felt too static, I guess. And especially like on the inside, like underneath, behind her back and stuff, it just feels too like static, and I wasn't liking it, and I couldn't quite catch like that hair look, like having a mixed strand look. So I ended up taking it out completely. I took out all the hair in the background and I redid it. I resketched it and repainted it and changed the whole, I guess, silhouette of it. And I ended up liking it a lot better. I also took out the green tint in the bottom because I felt like that was also kind of hindering my painting a little bit. And I was already kind of like about it because it felt like too much color in the beginning, so I felt like I might as well just take it out. And so then I started repainting this one, and I tried to make it so that the I guess locks of hair were kind of weaving into one of each other and kind of twirling within one another as well. And it looked so much better to me, and I had so much more fun painting it. And despite how much work I put in the previous one, because as I was painting, I was like, I don't really like how this is coming out. But then I was like, oh, well, maybe that's just the art block talking. And I ended up painting all of it, and then I still didn't like it in the end, and I tried fixing it. So I felt like it was just better if I just completely redid it. And I'm so happy that I did because it looks so much better in my opinion. Even though I really did like how the hair was kind of swooshing upwards with kind of the effect that maybe her hands kind of swooshed up really fast or something. I think this is a lot more almost calming in a way and not as chaotic as the first one was. And it just feels more like flowy, and I love it. So, yeah, I'm really happy that I redid the hair and I didn't add the green back in. Maybe I could have done a different color. I don't know. I just like how the new one looks. And I also added this kind of lightened airbrush section behind her back. so that the hair falling off of her chest is pushed more forward, as well as her kind of body silhouette, and her dorsal fin was kind of blending in with it previously, so I kind of bumped it forward by pushing the hair back with the lightened airbrush color. So usually I tend to do the face first, but I ended up doing I ended up not touching it ever since the first rendering of the painting, in terms of just quickly painting out certain little things like a stray line or something like that, and just quickly adding in some shading. I actually just kind of left it alone, and then I didn't touch it until the very end of the painting, which I normally don't do, but I felt like the line work just made it easier for me to kind of leave it where it was and then come back to it later, because it kind of felt like it was already up to finish with the rest of the painting until the end. I felt like there wasn't that much that needed to be done on the face after that either. I felt like I just needed to tweak a few things, fix something here and there, but the main thing that I struggled with on the face was actually the nose. And while the nose is at a difficult angle, I felt like it looked fine, and then as I tried to render it out, it just wasn't getting that look that I wanted. It actually started looking weirder, so I had to go back to my references and try to reconstruct it, and in the end I think it's okay. I definitely don't love it in comparison to other noses that I've drawn, but I think it still is readable, and I think it's a minor thing in comparison to all the other things that I really love about the painting. So then I go in with some highlights, just really subtle highlights. I wish I kind of did a little bit higher ones, like in terms of like brightness. I feel like it would have brought the painting together a little bit more. But then I started using the dragon scale brush, which I found online, and I just put it in white, and then I set it to overlay, and then I went back over it with a clipping mask and kind of put these similar to like rainbow colors over the scales, and that kind of gave it this iridescence look, which is what I was going for before. And I think if I ended up drawing all the scales and painted them individually, it wouldn't have been as effective. So I'm glad that I ended up doing it with the brush. I kind of want to bump up the colors slightly more so that it's a little bit more obvious, but I also kind of like the subtleness of it as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this painting. I hope you guys enjoy it. I'm really proud of this one. I know it's relatively simple in comparison to my other paintings. I'm really happy with it despite feeling a little bit art blocked. It was super fun to do. I absolutely love the colors, which is something I normally struggle with. And I'm actually really happy with the shading as well, especially in the torso and just generally the upper half. So yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!